Hey guys, welcome back to another episode on my channel. I've got a great chat lined up for you today, and I've got a great person who's going to give us some real cool, gonna challenge us a little bit, gonna give us some real cool insight, everything around dating. So please welcome Emily Jane to the show. Welcome.
Hello. How are you?
I'm good. How you doing today?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good.
I'm so excited to have you on because me and Ems, we met on set of a film. And, you know, in between shooting, we had some great chats about different things. And then when we talked about dating and stuff, we had some things we agreed about, things we had different perspectives. So I think it's always good to get, like, just different perspectives on things and seeing where we can bridge a gap.
Yeah.
And especially because dating nowadays is such a madness in terms of with everything.
Yeah. It's interesting to see even... I got told off, by the way, for those chats on set.
Did you?
Yeah.
Why? Who told you off?
Because they were like, what if you'd upset him? And I was like,
me?
He's a big boy. I'm sure he can cope with that.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that was... We had some really good chats, man. Yeah, I think the discourse around it is really important. I feel like people... And I mean, that kind of showed it to me that people are really afraid to debate. People are really genuinely concerned to disagree on things, I think in part because they think, well, if we disagree on something, we can't be friends. Or we can't... They struggle to find a common ground. It's this weird kind of tribalism thing.
It's so true. And that's honestly, that is like a really big part of why I want to get people like you on, that where there'll be some things that we not line up on, some things that I'm sure we'll have different perspective, you know, being a woman, being a guy, etc. And it's weird. We do live in like a weird tribal time of like, oh, if you don't agree, then that's it. We are now enemies. Like it's really crazy. So I want to change that for sure. Yeah,
I think definitely even dating apps, I think just makes that whole situation so much worse because all of a sudden you've got everything about someone reduced down on kind of just a list of bullet points of like, okay, this is what my political beliefs are, my religious beliefs. Like even on Hinge and stuff, it's like, do you smoke? Do you not? Like you can filter all these things out, and in a way you're like, oh, that's useful because if I don't want to date someone who smokes, like for example, if you had the belief of I never want to date someone who smoked, then you can go, oh, okay, that person isn't for me, or oh, okay, that person drinks, I don't drink, or oh, that person's conservative and I'm liberal. But I think it just ends up polarising people even more because then you just end up with you only surround yourself with people who think and speak and act just like you.
Echo chamber.
Yeah.
Massively.
Yeah, for sure. And you end up in this weird bubble, and I think that's when you end up getting people pushed to the fringes of belief systems. Yeah. Because they're either never challenged on it, and they don't have conversation about it, but they also then can't find the middle ground, and it's like they take all of their animosity, their anger, and they project it onto what they deem kind of the opposite of them, because they're like, well, I must be right.
100%.
So it's all on them. And
it's so true. And I think, you know, and we'll get into it in a minute, and I think that reflects in, like, with Brexit, how the country was literally so divided with the whole, like, president election, like, in the States, where the country was almost split half and half, and one half had no idea that the other half were even there, and that just shows how much we're not conversing with people just because of based on what we think about certain things. Yeah,
and I think especially nowadays, and I mean, I guess always, but I would argue that especially with younger generations, if you're someone who holds a conservative belief, I think because you're more likely to be lambasted for it.
Yes.
I think sometimes those people are quieter on what they think.
Yeah.
Or you have older generations who believe that you shouldn't tell people who you vote for. That's a common... I remember when I was a kid asking my dad, like, oh, who did you vote for? And he wouldn't tell me.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I was older because he was like, it's none of your business.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's so interesting, isn't it? When you think, as a younger person, I am very vocal about who I vote for because I believe in who I vote for or whatever.
Of course. Yeah.
My political opinions are quite plain to see. I'm quite an open person anyway, but I think for people where they hold their cards closer to their chest,
yes,
I think that's when you kind of get this the concept of the underdog, or these people kind of sneaking in, and you go, oh, I didn't even realise that was going to happen. I think so many people were just blindsided and thought, of course we're not going to like leave the EU or whatever, because you completely failed to see that a lot of the older generation, if they're either having the conversation on social media, it's going to be something like Facebook, in which case, again, echo chamber, you see what you engage with the most. Massively. And you engage with the most what you agree with or like really disagree with. So these people end up having actual real life conversation, like, whereas we see what's on Instagram and things like that and what's on someone's story, and we're like, yeah, completely agree with that. Yeah, look, I see everyone thinks and acts like me. God, exactly. I was right.
So true.
So I think sometimes we fail to see that actually some people, they're not on social media, or they have these conversations in real life, or they don't have these conversations with other people. So but I mean, it translates to dating as well, I think.
It really does. Sure. Yeah. Excellent segue.
What can I say?
Let's ask, Tinder Swindler, have you seen it?
I was going to ask you about this. Yeah? I watched your Tinder Swindler video.
Yeah. Oh, did you watch it?
Do you know, I watched it with... I
think I released that yesterday as well, 2 days ago, yeah.
I watched it with my Spanish friend, Roger.
Yeah.
And he literally, like, so already there's, like, I would say kind of a slight language barrier. Yeah. We're watching it, and he was like, am I allowed to swear, by the way?
Yeah, go
okay, right, cool. Like, start gobbing off. But he was just like, what the fuck is this? Like, he thought it was a joke. He thought it was either a parody thing, or he thought it was a film, because of the way it was shot. And I remember for the first kind of 30 minutes of it, I was like, I swear I thought I saw an article on this saying it was real life, but they were proper like setting the scene of like, and then I fell in love with him. Yeah. And he took me on his yacht or his plane. Yeah, no, that was crazy. That was crazy. It was an interesting
What
watch.
did you think about, let's start with him. What did you think about him, the guy?
Okay, on what level? As in, what's my personal opinion on what he's done, or what did I make of him as a
why do you think he was so successful in doing what he was doing?
Well, and I would definitely agree with you. I think that money holds a lot of power. Mm-hmm. And I think, especially, like, quite a few of the women in the documentary I noticed were people who were quite successful themselves.
Yeah.
These weren't poor women, because the guy wasn't interested in pulling women that didn't have any money, because otherwise he can't continue to run his Ponzi scheme.
Yeah.
So these are already women who are relatively successful. You've then got someone who is, or appears to be, way more. You know, he's got loads of money. He's living this lavish lifestyle, and I think there's a part of it of this aspirational, well, I want that, and I'd love to have that, and also a thing of, well, he's really successful and I want to be around like-minded people.
Yeah.
And maybe him being so successful will actually encourage me to be more successful.
Do you think that's why they had heavy interest in him from the start, because it was kind of more, I want to be in his circles, or do you think there was a romantic aspect for it, wasn't it, for them?
I mean, I think there has to be a romantic aspect for you to stay with someone. I think, especially I think when we talk about the trope of gold diggers.
Yes.
I mean, almost all, probably, I would say all of the women I know, but it would probably be almost all, could not lie to themselves.
Yeah.
And do that, because you're miserable. You're absolutely, like, you're not happy when you're in a relationship with someone that you don't love, and in fact I feel like you end up growing this kind of resentment.
Yeah.
I think so. The love is possibly part of it. I think when someone love bombs you, and I've had that happen before, you definitely get caught up in what they tell you and what they say to you.
Yeah.
And even if you can kind of take a step back and go, oh, like, this is a lot, you kind of go, but isn't this crazy? Like, isn't this what the films talk about? So I can completely, as much as I can look at it and go, these women are idiots.
Yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
who goes, yeah, I'm gonna go on a private jet with a man I've never met.
Yeah.
Oh, he's brought his baby mama.
Yeah.
Like, that's normal.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
But I mean, of course the money would sway anyone. But I mean, personally, when they were talking about, and I thought he was so attractive and things.
Yeah.
I did not think he was good looking at all.
Yeah.
I like a man with a good jawline, and I was like, he's not really hitting that for me right now.
Yeah.
And I didn't get a good kind of energy. I got from the photos that they showed from his account, all I got was, this is someone who wants to show how much they have.
Oh yeah.
And that tells me actually nothing about them besides they have money.
Very true. Which is why I was like, when I was watching it, I was like, how it's so interesting that they have no idea who he is as a person, yet they were willing to dedicate so much of their time to spend with him and be in his circles. And honestly, because I do think it was because of the lifestyle that he portrayed and, what he could potentially do for them. And it's so interesting, when you were saying about how people love bombing you and, when you've had that, the famous saying is, men fall in love with their eyes and women fall in love with their ears. And I think one thing that I was saying to a couple of my friends, he was clearly very emotionally intelligent and he very much knew how to play on the workings of like a woman and her fantasies and her attractions, in terms of, because he would dedicate so much time to communicating with them. Because like with the first woman, they were hardly in the same place at the same time. They probably only had sex maybe a few times, yet she was like completely in love with him. And I think a lot of that came from the communication and emotional attention that he gave her.
Yeah, and I think as well, I think there's almost a thing about this jet setter lifestyle, or if someone seems like they're harder to get a hold of, either they're off doing something, they're busy and important or whatever, I think you value the time you have with them more. I also think it makes you more eager to spend more time with them, as opposed to if someone is really available all the time. For some people that's great, if they're someone who likes to be surrounded by people all the time. Like, I know me personally, like, if someone sends me one text in a day, one text every 2 days, like, that's perfect for me. Like, I don't like feeling like someone is surrounding me. I'm a very independent person, and I have lots of things that I like to do, and I wouldn't want to spend my whole time with just one person.
Of course.
So I think for women who also think like that, there's this kind of, it's more of a game. You kind of get addicted to that feeling of like, I've got him, no I don't. I've got him, no I don't. I think, in the same way of, there's that thing of it's like in the currency of love. A man or a woman, it can sometimes be perceived as more desirable if they're already in a relationship, or they're adored, because you're like, oh wow, he's thought of highly, or he's so I definitely think that him. His physical proximity to her ended up really, and in the long run, if he hadn't have actually been a swindler, I feel like, in Dora the Explorer, when she's like, swipey, no swipey. Like, if he actually hadn't have been a swindler, I feel like eventually you would have got really bloody sick of someone who is there like once a month, like because as soon as you have kids or a house or any kind of commitments to each other, then you're like, actually I do want you around a little bit more than this. Maybe this, I need more than this. But I think especially in the short term, the feeling can almost be a bit addictive, I think, to some people.
Of course, that honeymoon phase of the excitement of someone new and trying to get to know them and stuff, especially if that's what you're looking for, is definitely so enticing, that feeling, which is why I think so many of us are serial daters, because we're addicted to that initial honeymoon feeling, and then when that kind of calms down, as every relationship does, people go, I don't know if this is for me anymore.
I like the way that I would compare that is, in a way, I prefer the moment before you have a first kiss with someone to actually the moment after. Because it's like
yes.
the moment before, it's all of this anticipation.
Yes.
Like if you have good chemistry and you've got good banter,
Yeah.
he's got a twinkle in his eye, and you're like, oh, you know. I think there's this certain there's this feeling that you get the energy between you two, the sparks are flying, whatever you want to call it. That tension that you have with someone is so high, like the moment before that. And I think that's the feeling where people are like, got this bit of an adrenaline rush, like, is it gonna happen, is it not gonna happen?
That is so true. I think that is so true, but especially for guys, because one thing that I always say as well is that when before a guy has sex, he's putting everything in, right? After he has sex, I think is a really good reflection of either what his intentions are or how he feels, because it's like, you know, if a guy comes over, has sex, and after that he just seems so cold, that's what he was there for. Do you know what I mean? But it feels like you get to know each other after you have sex and everything, and then, you know, you have a moment of intimacy in terms of cuddling, or you still talk and everything. That is a guy who is actually investing emotionally in you. Does that make sense?
I think it's why, because I'm aware of how duplicitous people can be, so I think that's probably the reason why my policy is always just outright honesty.
Yes.
I feel like I have by now like a pretty good sensor for people where you know when you kind of get the vibe where you're like, I don't think this person's being sincere.
Yeah.
But for sure, I would say that sometimes you meet, like, we're driven by desire, right, as humans. You know this as an actor,
of course,
right? Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all about what motivates us is our desire. So what's your desire in that moment? And I think people will manipulate how they actually feel, or even things of like, I'm putting on my best self. You know, it's technically a kind of manipulation. Like, So yeah, I would say that is kind of a good agreement. I would say it can go both ways too. I know plenty of women who also enjoy casual sex and kind of that's what they want, but I would also argue that it does seem to be more accessible for women to have casual sex as opposed to I would say unless you are like the top 5% of like attractiveness,
she knows
earning.
the Pareto distribution. She knows. She knows.
I know. Right, I know. Okay, because let me tell you. Okay, there are some fugly guys on Tinder. Like, let me just put that out there. Okay, there are some really, and I'm sure there are going to be guys being like, yeah, there's some butters girls too. Like that, of course there are, right? But the amount of, so I'm bi, right? So the amount of guys to girls, okay, I'm seeing, say if we've got a 50-50 split, I'm like, wow, look at all these pretty women. Yeah. Look at them. They are so, wow, so pretty, so gorgeous. And then you go into the men's and you're like, looks like a thumb. Like, so I would say unless you are in that like top percentile of, you know, you've hit the genetic jackpot, you're really good looking, you're probably charismatic, and of course like personality and like stuff like that comes into it.
Yeah, dating apps is purely on first looks. Yeah, there's nothing else there.
Like you would completely just swipe on someone if they weren't as attractive. So I can see why, you know, for a lot of guys, actually they're maybe not having as much sex as people think they are, because unless they are like the attractive ones, or in person if they have really good pulling game. Yeah, 100%. Whereas I think for women it's more accessible, but maybe less women want to have casual sex. But even the women that I know who do, like, I'm sure they have, you know, either intentionally or not, done similar things of like, okay, well, I really want to get with this guy, and or like if we're driven by our desires, then whatever we want is going to kind of colour how we treat people.
Yeah. So the thing is, you're completely right. There's a small percentage of guys who end up getting the majority of attention from women and sexual intimacy from women. Yeah. But I think, and obviously because of dating apps and the internet, the numbers are even more skewed to the top percent, because, you know, it's like the girl who grew up in Norfolk was only exposed to the people in her circle. Now she can match with the hot shot from London, the athlete from Paris, and, you know, the film producer from LA or something. Although
I would argue that and from personal experience, having meeting these people in real life as well, because I love looking at people's their dating profiles, and I'm just like, I love giving feedback on people's dating profiles as well, like, especially like, I was talking to my friend of about guys who pose with fishes in their, and I was like, don't do that. Don't, trust me. Red flag. If I see you posing next to your car or a gun or a fish, instantly.
Guys,
so
change
fit.
all the photos. Don't post with a jet, no cars, nothing.
No fish. Okay.
No fish.
Save the angling for date 2. I love watching people's things, but I would say that even meeting people where you go, wow, these are really, like, and Hinge is a really good example. Hinge is full of Instagram models and edgy looking people, hipsters and things like that. Yeah. It's the hipster version of Tinder. Yes. But it's so narcissistic. I would say way more than apps like Tinder, because these people know they're really good looking.
Wait, so would you say that's from the guys that you find attractive on Hinge, or would you say that's all the guys on there?
I would say a lot of the guys. I would say in general, the people on Hinge are more attractive than the people on Tinder.
Really?
Yeah.
I think it's the complete opposite, you know.
Really?
Yeah, I feel like on Tinder, plus that half the girls on Tinder are like promoting their OnlyFans or like just their Instagram page, to be honest. But I definitely feel like most, and maybe because Tinder was the first app, and because it's known as the hookup app or something, so I feel like a lot of people are more focused on the attractiveness on that, whereas something like Hinge, like, they have their 3 questions and something where I feel there's a little bit more to find something more below the surface of the individual.
I would say, so I actually worked with someone who met her now long-term boyfriend on Hinge, and I think she still refers to him as like, I think he's still saved in her phone as like her boyfriend's name, Hinge.
Yeah,
like
that's
next
so
to
funny.
it. I would definitely say you do seem to get more people looking for longer term relationships on Hinge.
Yes.
But I would say the people that, or at least in my experience of going on there, kind of the demographic of the people, when you actually chat to them, like, it's, you realise, A that they know how good looking they are. Like, they're not idiots. They are probably, you know, they might have like 5,000 followers on Instagram or something. They've done a couple of ad campaigns for a fashion agency or something.
That is not the average guy on there, though. You know that, right? The average guy is not that guy.
No, but my point is that even the guys on there where they're somewhat attractive, or they're higher up in the kind of attractive scale. Yeah. Because they have so many more women going for them than the people on the app who are maybe less attractive. Yeah. They can have top pickings. They can take who they think is the best. Yeah. So then I think what you end up with is kind of this inequality of, whereas in real life you kind of go, oh, okay, maybe you are actually more physically attractive than me. Okay, we all have eyes. It happens in relationships. Yeah. Okay, but actually your personality really complements mine. Yes. Or I think you're really good looking and you have this about you and I find that really captivating, which you don't get until you meet someone in person. Very true. Whereas I think because the apps completely take that out, all of a sudden it's just looks based. So you end up with, even though you've got these guys who are kind of the top echelon, yes, they then only want the top echelon girls, which of like of how pretty some of the girls are on there. You kind of go, wow, okay, so where do I fit into this? Yeah. I think it's an interesting thing. So even I think sometimes the guys who are the top echelon, I don't know necessarily if because it's so accessible to them and they can afford to be more picky. Maybe some of them maybe don't have as much sex as we think they do because they are more picky, because they're like, well, I want a girl who looks like that. I wonder about that sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. Like, if one of those guys, you know, if he has a lot of options, like anyone, whatever options you have, you're going to choose who you feel you'd be most attracted to. But I would say that they would still massively entertain, maybe, for example, or subjectively, girls that maybe he wouldn't normally go for because she's offering sex for him. Because I think one thing that I think sometimes some girls can get confused is they mistake sexual attention for like relationship attention, and think that, because the thing is, when a guy is just looking for sex, his standards are much lower. Do you know what I mean? So like, it sounds
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess if you're not looking to have anything besides the sex aspect.
Yeah.
You're then not worried about, do I actually think their personality is attractive, particularly?
Yeah.
Do I agree with this or that they say? Do I? So then it's like, meh, could I get an erection to this person? Like,
Yeah.
yes, cool, great.
Yeah. Because most guys, like, I feel, I've only met a few guys in my life where if they were somewhat attractive, where that and it can be depending what point in life they're in, but if, you know, the average girl, you know, said, hey, do you want to come over tonight? That's it. I know only a couple that would actually turn it down, maybe based on whether he didn't find her that attractive or not. Whereas most guys, like, if a woman offers him sex, most guys are going to say yeah. If they know that they don't have to put any effort in, and if it's really easy, if it's literally put on a plate, he'll at least consider it. Does that make sense? Even if she's not his quote unquote top choice.
But I would say that it's the same for women. I would say it's a similar phenomenon for women. I think it's important to break down that a lot of the way that we treat women's sexuality is seen through the lens of what we define as typical woman or appropriate female sexuality.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes it can be a bit self-fulfilling if we get it into our heads of, well, this is, well, women don't do that because women don't actually have as much sex, because women don't want to have as much sex, or because, you know, women tend to want longer term partners and things like that. I think a lot of that is actually because we're told that's what we should be having. Because as women, our sexuality has always been, it's always been much more a topic of conversation, even if you look at, like, female virginity. It's such a talking point.
Yeah.
What about the men?
Yeah.
What about male virginity? What about, you know, even going back when you're in school and stuff, and people were like, oh, she's had sex with someone, she's a slut, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I think because they're viewed differently, I think sometimes we get it into our heads of like, actually, this is what I'm surrounded by, people saying that women shouldn't have as much sex, and women who have quite a lot of sex are ostracized, especially if they speak out on it. So therefore, a lot of women aren't going to be doing that. Whereas,
do you think that's still the case today? Because I feel like we have a very like sexually free society, especially for like our generation.
Oh, I would say it's way better than it was. Like, way better. Even than when I was, even when you look at, oh my god, the worst one, 2000s or kind of late 90s articles.
Yes.
That was a dark era. That was not a good era for women.
Yeah.
Like, tabloids were rife.
Yeah.
And the size zero trope was rampant. And some of the articles are disgusting. You look at them now, and even at the time I remember being like, these are horrible. Look at the way that Britney Spears was basically persecuted by the tabloid press. Like, and look at the way that her virginity was discussed. And I think it's important to say as well that we're looking at this from the lens of England.
Of course.
Which, if you went to the Bible Belt of America, is going to be completely different.
Be very different.
Yeah, and if you go to any other country which is more strongly religious, if you went to anywhere within Africa, realistically, regardless of whether the majority faith was Islam or if it was Christianity, again, then they're not going to have the same experiences that we have. So I would say for them, probably it doesn't feel like as much has changed. And in some countries, actually, it's going backwards, like especially to do with gay rights and things, and reintroducing death penalty and stuff. But
so definitely in other countries, like you're saying.
In other countries, it's gonna be different, especially if we take it out of the framework of kind of heteronormative relationships. But yeah, even within the past 10 years, I've noticed a difference. I would say you're an idiot if you disagree with that, actually, because it's pretty plain to see, even in the language that the press uses nowadays, even in the fact that we're having a conversation more about it. But I would still say that it's just less visible now. And this is the thing I would say as well about a lot of misogyny and a lot of male violence. When the Sarah Everard stuff was happening, I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine and saying, it's not about say if you've got 10 guys, I don't know exactly what the statistic is out of, like, say 1 in 10 or whatever of men who abused. I know that the statistic for harassment for women is 97% of women have experienced sexual harassment. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, 1 in 10 guys assault a woman.
Yeah.
It's way less about the 1 in 10 men that assault the woman. And it's so much more about the 3 guys who witness it who do nothing. The other 5 guys who are in the friendship group who continue to let this behaviour go unchecked. And then there's maybe one person who would say something. A lot of it is actually about this inaction.
Yes.
Or
being complicit.
Yeah, and I think sometimes people kind of shirk responsibility, and I get it because it's uncomfortable. But at the same time, it's like, well, do you not think it's very uncomfortable for us? Like, I was on a bus the other day, and some guy was harassing me on there. And a guy came and sat down in between me and this guy and started chatting to him so that he wasn't harassing me. And that is the first time anyone has ever intervened.
Yeah.
Ever. And I think you get a lot of people saying, like, you know, I stood up and I stopped the rapist. Actually, I don't know how much of that is actually true. Just show me the evidence.
Thing is, I think that's so true. I do think, though, there is an element of a lot of guys being... I think there's 2 parts to this, because I agree. We shouldn't allow... If we see something going on, we shouldn't... You know, we should say something. I think, one, there's an element of... Because there's this culture of being strong and independent women, guys are like, okay, well, I'm going to let you deal with it because I don't want to offend you and thinking that you can't deal with it, right? Depending on the level. Obviously, if a guy's like attacking someone, that's different.
Yeah.
But if a guy's like continuously trying to talk to you and stuff and everything, then, you know, I know that there'll be some guys that be like, okay, maybe I would like to say something, but I don't want her to think I don't think she's capable, so I'm going to let her handle it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I would say it's a complete fallacy. For people who think that, I would say you're clearly not listening to women. Like, you've not been listening to what we've been saying.
Right.
Like, instead of going, oh, but they're, you know, all of the women I know are really strong. That's great. Women are strong. They are some of the strongest people I know. Like, they go through so much shit that they shouldn't need to.
Yeah.
But I would say it's a complete fallacy because the entire dialogue, conversation for years has been, no, we want you to stand up for us. No, we want you to do these things. And then guys still go, I just don't know what the answer is.
Shall I tell you what I think a big thing is? And just because I'm talking from my anecdotal experience.
Yeah.
I think the degree to which women want a man's support or a man's help varies per woman.
Yes.
So what I mean is, like,
sure.
I've had it where, you know, where like if I'm at the station, a woman's got like heavy suitcases and we're about to go up the stairs. I've had it where I'd be like, oh, would you like me to help you? And she's like, oh yeah, thank you very much. And I found, to be fair, she was an older woman, so I was like, of course I'm going to offer. And then I've had the same thing where, exact same thing, I think she was maybe a woman in her 30s or something. I offered to take her luggage up and she literally said to me, she was like, no thanks, I don't need a man's help. So I was just like, okay. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Ooh, sorry. I can understand. I can understand. So I can understand her point. However, I would say that's fucking rude. Like, but then I would say, is this more a testament to how many people are arseholes? I think there are better ways of putting it. I think you can just say, if you don't want someone's help, you can say no. I can understand what she's saying. I think sometimes people get into their heads about this. Like, I don't need your chivalry, or I don't need you to hold the door for me. And I'm like, actually, I do want you to hold the door for me because it's really fucking rude if you let it slam in my face.
Yeah, of
like,
course.
or if I've got heavy bags. But I know the point you're trying to make is that every woman is going to be different. It's true. It's a generalization to say that, like, all women are unique, right? So everyone's going to think differently, and people are going to have different limits and different ways of thinking. So I would agree. The thing the point I'm more trying to make in terms of speaking up is more that actually, and in the same conversation about, you know, discussing, you know, calling women sluts or attitudes towards women's sexuality, my point is more that, much like misogyny, a lot of it now is it's this kind of toxic, it's everywhere. It's kind of leaked into our vocabulary and into our vernacular, and it's even things that we don't say, or the tone that we say things, or slight remarks. I had a friend who said that one of his friends once made a comment about a woman driving an expensive car, and he made a remark about, like, oh, how much her husband must earn, or something like that.
Right.
Okay, but a lot of the the problems that women are having now is it's a lot more underground. It's less vocal. It's less. It's because people know, they're like, oh yeah, I probably shouldn't say that. Actually, probably shouldn't think that. Actually, I don't think that. Or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think it still seeps into our society. It seeps into a lot of policy making. It seeps in, even like we see it in medicine, man. Like women are completely just routinely ignored. It's why we see such problems a lot of the time in neonatal wards and things like that, and women's health, and trying to get researched for medical issues that disproportionately affect women, and obviously then if you're part of a minority ethnic group within this country, then that problem is even worse.
I want to touch on, like, let's say slut shaming, for example, right? So, you know, we live in a free sexual society. You know, everyone should be able to do what they want without being judged. But do you know that the people who slut shame women the most are actually other women? They're not men.
Yeah.
Because men,
it's the
if anything,
women.
men love sluts because it's like, we can have sex.
Yeah, although
do you know what I mean?
There is this thing, isn't there, of it's like you, what is it, where you want like a freak on a freak in the sheets, but
lady in the streets.
A lady in the streets. There we go. Yeah. That's the one, right? So I think, of course, like if you're a guy who loves sex and you're like, yes, more sex, but I think there is still that thing of like, oh, but not for a wife.
So we should stay on that, but carry on.
But with regards to the slut shaming, no, for sure. And I've said this like many times with people before.
Yeah.
Is that actually a lot of the time the biggest upholders of patriarchy are women, and we're so good at it. We're so good at it because hell hath no fury like a woman scorned.
Do you think slut shaming is part of the quote unquote patriarchy, or do you think that's just women trying to eliminate competition? So it's the same as like if you've got a few guys and they're trying to get the attention of a girl, it's very natural. Guys would be like, well, yeah, guess what? Well, I came first in the race, or my man's only 5'7" over here. So it's like eliminating the competition because of, and we can talk about this after, the whole thing of, you know, guys not wanting to quote unquote wife up certain kind of promiscuous girls or whatever as a general consensus and all this, and women also, because a lot of women who, especially if they want a guy, they kind of know this. It's kind of, you know, if a girl's into a guy, she'll be like, oh yeah, but you know, she slept with half of the guys in here, so I probably wouldn't go there. But I'm a really great option because I've not done that.
I've got
do you know what I mean?
Much potential.
So do you think, how much of it do you think is the quote unquote patriarchy, and how much do you think it's just women trying to eliminate other competition?
I do definitely think, and I would also like to point out that I think this is definitely getting better, because I think now more and more women are going, yeah, why actually are we competing against each other? Like, well, because they want
the man, don't they?
Well, but I think that as a society we've pushed that because it aids the society. I think especially if it's like we're trying to enforce, say, the patriarchy. It's like, what a genius plan to get women to be self-enforcing. We don't even need to police them that hard because they'll do it themselves.
I think competition's always been around though. Men have always competed for women.
But I would completely agree that I think there is always a certain element of like, I'm gonna throw you under the bus because I want this guy. I completely. So I can see why. I would say that I don't think that would necessarily be the thing I would reach for. No. It would maybe more be like a fault in their actual personality. But I would say that I'm sure it does happen, and I think we are still animal in the sense of we're thinking of our own survival, right? And we're thinking of number one. So of course, if we're kind of like, we see someone, especially if it's a one person, this immediate competition.
Yes.
I would say when that argument falters a little bit is when you've got an entire group of people, when you're kind of spreading it out, dissipating it online, dissipating it into larger groups or into people where it's like, these are not people competing with you. I don't actually know that many women now that I'm in my 20s where it's like, we're competing for this guy. Maybe when you're in school where you're like, you know, everyone wants to sleep or like date the lead football guy or whatever, you know. That was a thing when I was in secondary school. I don't know if that's still a thing, but that was a definite thing. And I remember then it was something, but I think actually and a really positive change is seeing more women uplifting each other, and I'm seeing less cattiness and more people going, yeah, actually there's why are we doing this? Because it only hurts ourselves. It only harms us, actually, to perpetuate that, especially if the thing that we're choosing to tear this other woman down with is her sexuality.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
and also it's I mean, for people who are like religious viewers, it's that thing, isn't it, of like how can you judge someone, you know, thorn in your eye and all that, like how can you how can we I think if you view it from a lens as well of like it's sinful behaviour, I think, and that's a whole nother topic of conversation, but I think that how can you judge someone? We're all sinners or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
So
I do think that the, you know, because men compete for women and women do compete for men, and I think the competition, competing, whatever it is, in the dating game or market, I think it's even more prevalent when you come out of school, because you know how you said earlier, like when you're looking at dating apps, you're like, oh, there's so many great women, and you look at the guys and you're like, there's only a few guys here that I would actually give a chance. And I think most women feel that way. So if a woman is looking to get the guy, because there's such few options that a lot of women would actually consider, I think there can be even more of an incentive to be like, well, because there's only one of him out of like 50 guys and 5 other women want him, I'm going to do whatever I can to get him.
I think it becomes more of an abstract thing though when we start talking about apps, because this competition that we feel, we're not actually interacting or seeing any of these other women. We don't come into contact with any of them.
Yeah.
So if we have this competition, it's something that we're kind of projecting inwards.
Yes.
And it's not like we don't know them. We can't actually reach out to this guy on Tinder and be like, hey, before you were about to swipe left on me, I just need you to know that half of the women on here, like, you know, do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, we don't actually know them. So I think that, again, I think it becomes...
They've all been round the block.
Yeah. Many times I've seen them. Get out the bell from Game of Thrones, you're like, shame. No,
I saw her walking naked in the street, I swear.
Yeah. I think it becomes more abstract. I understand the point you're trying to make. I think it becomes more abstract because we're not actually in any kind of contact with these women. I would say that the competition you then internalize more.
That's true.
I would say that seeing other really attractive people, seeing people's profiles, I think it's why people who are dating coaches or people who are like, you know, let me tell you how to get the best dating profile.
Sure.
It's why they're successful, is because they're actually saying, look at all of these women here, look how successful they are, take these things and use it on yourself.
Yes.
And so I would say actually you tend to internalize that more. So instead of kind of projecting outwards onto people of don't go for her because of this, instead you go, well, they're successful because of that. So I'm going to take that, and now you should pick me because of this.
100%.
So I would say that maybe happens more, especially within the kind of dating app sphere.
I want to touch on double standards because you know, and the great example you gave is, you know, if a girl has got a very promiscuous past, a guy's like not wifey material, but then if a guy does, women generally don't disqualify him as a serious option. Yeah. Do you think double standards are fair? Okay. Do you understand why, or what do you think about that? Do you think it should change?
I mean, I in case you can't tell, I'm an ardent feminist. Yeah. So I believe that it shouldn't be one rule for one and one for another. And I believe that, especially within something like that, where we're not talking about like a man's physical capacity to father more children, you know, we're talking about the act of having sex with someone. Yes. I think it should be the same rule for everyone, or the same kind of attitude. You know, if we as a society decide actually no one should be having casual sex, then it should be no one. And if we decide actually no, people can do what they want, I think it should apply to everyone. I think it's only fair, because as well, when you look at the guys where it's like, I've slept with, you know, say if you've got a girl and she's like, you're my first, and he's like, I've already slept with 12 women. To me, it's not a high number, but, you know, for the sake of argument of in comparison. Yeah. You then kind of go, okay, well, you've slept with 12 women, so sorry, why are you expecting to wifey a virgin? Because these women aren't virgins that you've slept with before. I would say that it should be equal. I would say the double standard is very real. I've even like experienced it, but I would say that I would say that it's getting better, but no, I don't think that double standard should exist.
I completely agree in the sense that we should all be able to, you know, if people want to have casual sex, they should. But at the same time, then like, for example, I'm not entitled for you to choose me if you have a preference for someone else. Also as well, and you can tell me what you think, but there may be guys that you meet that you think, oh, well, you would be great to have casual fun with for a bit, but you don't actually have qualities that I like that would be for a long-term relationship. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think you can... and I think this depends, again, on who the person is.
Yeah.
I think for some people, they would struggle to separate out their kind of romantic feelings and their sexual attraction. I think if you're someone who can kind of differentiate the two more easily, then I would say, yeah, of course there are people where you go, but not so much because of this thing of, oh, because you've slept with such and such, or because of this, but maybe more just like actually, when we have sex, it feels really good. We work well together sexually. However, as a romantic couple, maybe I just... And I would also stress, don't sleep with people who you wouldn't want to be friends with. Like, that's when you kind of go...
I agree completely.
This is a bit of a low moment. Like, you're sleeping with someone that you actually don't like.
You don't even like
Isn't that a bit peak, really?
Yeah.
So... But, and I would say, I think it's fine if you kind of go, okay, I want to have casual sex with you. I think it comes down to a respect thing. It's like, I respect you. It's not the fact that you're doing something wrong or I don't like you is the reason why I don't want to be in a relationship with you, or the amount of people you slept with, or whatever. It's actually just maybe I don't feel that kind of chemistry, or maybe I just think, well, you know, you want kids and I don't want kids, or you want this and you want that and I don't want that.
Yeah.
So therefore we fundamentally wouldn't work. However, the actual act of us having sex feels great. I would say that's fine. And I would say as well, I completely respect someone's autonomy to say, no, I can't sit here and go, you have to sleep with her. You must.
Of course.
But I respect someone's autonomy to say that, no, they don't want to sleep with that person for whatever reason. That's fine. Do whatever you want.
Or they don't want to get into a relationship with that person for whatever.
Yeah, but I would say examine the reasons why. Examine the reasons why, because I think sometimes it is rooted in either... in prejudice. It could be to do with their sexuality. Could be to do with how much sex they're having. It could be to do with like what job they're working. There's so many different kind of variables for that. I would examine why. Why is it that you then wouldn't want to marry or date this person, but you would want to have sex with them? And also, what is it that you're valuing them for? If you're going, I really respect this person and I enjoy having sex with them, so I'm going to do that, but I just don't really think we'd work as a couple. Or you're going, oh, I'd never marry her. Like, no, I'd fuck her though.
Yeah.
Like,
which a lot of guys, like I said, when guys are just looking for sex, a lot of guys, their standards just go out the window.
Yeah, but I think that's more... I think that, again, just raises a larger issue about the way that men talk about women, the way men view women, the respect men have for women, as opposed to, like, speaking on my own experience, I've never gone, never marry him, but I'd fuck him though. Like, but
so there's never been a guy that you're like, I'm physically attracted to you, but I wouldn't consider you long term.
No, so I mean more in terms of the tone that I'm using. I mean more in terms of the way that I'm phrasing things, because I think that the way that you say something, the words that you choose, that's important. Yeah. And I think that is an insight into what prejudices you might have, what your belief system is, what you're actually thinking about. Of course, there's been
so
guys
the message is fine, but it's how you say it.
It's completely fine to say, I can only see us really having a casual thing. Maybe we'd stay friends, maybe not. But I wouldn't be interested in seeing you long term. I think that message is completely fine. And I respect someone's, whatever their reason is. It could even be a thing of like, you know, say if you were someone where you said, you know, I come from a religious background, you know, and therefore I couldn't marry you because either you're not of the same religion or I wouldn't even sleep with you because you've slept with people, or how do I put this? Say if you were someone who said, okay, I'm saving myself until marriage. Yeah. That's really important for me because it's really intrinsic to my belief system as a Christian, as a Muslim, whatever.
Yes.
And then if you met someone and you said, but this is someone who likes to have a lot of casual sex, and actually that goes completely against my belief system as a Christian, as a Muslim, whatever, then I go, okay, that's a different kettle of fish.
Yes. Because
what's informing your decision is your sense of kind of morality. Your belief system is guiding you.
Sure.
But I think you I think anyone who is of that belief would admit that that's because of their religion, and that's what's kind of informing it, because they go, fair enough, like, respect to you, but again, it's about the language that you use. Are you going, no, because you're a slut and I'm this Bible bashing Christian and I da da da, or is it just actually that's not like the lifestyle that I live, and I have a different thing? And again, you go, okay, that's fine. Like in situations like that, you go, well, that's a shame, because and I actually take quite strong issue a lot of the time within religion, this thing of you shouldn't marry outside of your religion, because I've only ever seen it harm. I've never seen it actually cause any good. I've only ever seen it harm people. I've seen it with a friend of mine who was disowned because she's a Bangladeshi Muslim.
Yes.
And she married a black Christian.
Yeah.
And it
I've got that in the family as well. Yeah.
And it just, I think it's heartbreak, but I respect your decision to say, actually, no, I wouldn't go there because I believe this. In the same way I respect if someone was like, hi, I like having casual sex. I'm not going to date you, good Christian boy, because we disagree on this fundamental thing. And actually, I really enjoy having this sexual freedom, whereas that's not a thing for you.
The thing is, I do think the reason you maybe exercise more discrimination in terms of having casual sex is because, especially as a woman, you have sexual abundance, whereas we know majority of guys don't. So it's kind of like, so equivalently, it could be a guy be like, okay, you would not be my ideal choice, but at the moment, I don't have anyone else. So if this is the only way I can have casual sex with someone, then I would do that.
But I would say that also applies to women, because you're talking about having this, we've got all of these men who would want to sleep with us. Okay, but that completely doesn't take into account the men that I actually want to sleep with.
Of
In
course.
which case it's then a similar situation of like, okay, I want to have some sex. Actually, there's only a couple of you that I'm really like vibing with, but maybe you want something else, maybe you're not that into me. Actually, what I want right now is just casual sex. So of course you would then lower your standards and be like, I wouldn't normally go for you. I wouldn't probably want to have a relationship with you, but right now I'm really either got this physical craving of like I want to have the sex, or maybe you're like, I've been damaged. I've just come out of a really long-term relationship, or maybe I've had an abusive relationship and I don't want something heavy right now.
Yeah, exactly.
So I would say that goes both ways. Of just because those people are available to you doesn't mean you want to sleep with them all.
Yeah, of course. I guess I'm just saying, for most guys, they don't have people who are available. For most, only that top percentile. What's something that you would want to ask if you could ask every guy a question in dating? What's something you would want to ask that maybe you don't understand? What don't you understand about maybe what guys do, how guys think when it comes to dating or sex or whatever it is?
What do I not understand? I feel like some of the stuff that I would ask would almost be a rhetorical question, because I feel like I know the answer, because I feel like if you dig deep enough, a lot of it can be rooted down to how someone's raised, right? So questions I might have about, why can't you talk about your feelings either more articulately, or I have to ask the question, you can't volunteer, things like that. But I feel like I can ask that question of someone.
Yeah.
But I feel like I already kind of know the answer, maybe a little bit.
Okay, well, ask one of these questions and let's see if we align in that.
Okay, so have you ever struggled to open up and talk about your feelings with a romantic partner?
Not struggle, but I just didn't open up as quickly as she did. So what I mean is, if she opened up about stuff, if we've been dating for a month, then she opened up about quite a bit of stuff. I probably wouldn't open up that level of stuff until maybe 3 or 4 months in.
Okay, why is that?
Because, I like to think that I'm very good at articulating my emotions. I wouldn't be afraid to articulate how I felt about something within the relationship, but if it's something opening up about like a dark past of mine or something, ultimately it's about trust. It's about trust. I think it's the same reason, because for most guys, if they see a girl that's attractive, he doesn't even have to talk to her, he would have sex with her, right? But for girls, even if they see a guy who they find very attractive, she's like, well, I don't really know him, so I don't know if I can trust to have that physical intimacy with him. And for guys, it's the same, but it's just the emotions. Like, you know, the emotional intimacy part is, you know, I say women are the gatekeepers for physical intimacy, and guys are the gatekeepers for emotional intimacy, and that's all about building trust. So I would say that's, I would argue for most men, if they are open to opening up about certain things, it's to know if he can trust her, especially because there's this pressure on men to be strong, confident, and masculine, and showing elements of emotional vulnerability. Not every girl is going to welcome that. So I think a lot of the time guys will see, okay, is this somebody that I can trust that part of me with? Because if she is, then I'll open up. Yeah, it's just establishing trust, really, for the main reason.
Yeah, I would say it's interesting that you talk about women need to feel like they can trust men for the physical side. Because I would say a lot of what informs that is actually this sense of we're very physically vulnerable to
100%.
the strength of men. Okay, I don't think you can deny that most men, and I used to be a powerlifter, right? So like even when I was doing powerlifting, it was like if I was up against your regular man, perhaps maybe I could go, you know, I could out squat him, say perhaps.
Yes.
But and yeah, so maybe if I was up against someone who didn't strength train or whatever, okay, on paper I'm physically stronger than them, sure.
Yeah.
But even then, there's still a thing of, well, as soon as you really start to get to someone who's like taller than me, their leverages are longer, like even for women who are physically strong,
yes,
you can't deny that most men are still going to outpower you, at least in upper body strength.
Yeah, there's a biological advantage men have.
Yeah, so I would say that because women have this physical vulnerability much more, I would say that's probably a big reason why women also have this thing of and I don't just mean sexually, I mean because they can sexually hurt you,
yes,
but also then the kind of slut shaming thing comes into it as well, of like, oh, okay, I need to trust that, you know, this is the appropriate moment, to have sex, it's been X amount of dates, okay, it's fine now, I'm allowed to do this, and I'm not going to be judged for it because, you know, we're dating, it's not. I would say that also comes into it, this kind of gatekeeping thing that you're talking about.
Yeah.
I would say that with regards to like women being more open in general, I would say not all women are. I would say it depends on your on the person. Again, like I'm a very open person with everyone, probably to a fault. My dad is like, but I say what I think.
Yeah.
Call a spade a spade. So, and that rubs some people the wrong way.
Oh, I get that.
Whatever,
Me too.
Overly sensitive, I don't know.
Yes. So
literally, I'm like, sorry, you asked for my opinion. Did you want what you wanted to hear?
Exactly.
Oh, right, okay. So not my opinion. Cool. Just so I know for future reference.
Yeah, so true.
But I would say that there is a thing, I would say that traditionally it's been expected and respected more for women to be open, vulnerably. Sorry, not vulnerably.
Emotionally.
Emotionally.
Yeah.
And to be more vulnerable. Sorry.
Yes.
It's what we see in popular media. It's what we see when we watch. Even on our screens. You know, the woman, she's got her sob story ready on hand, and the guy's like, "Yeah, sounds tough."
Yeah.
And then he's like, anyway, back to me. So I would say that because it's expected more, I would say that there's a pressure on women to actually kind of bear all and sundry a little bit more. But also at the same time, don't have too much baggage because that's scary.
Yeah.
When something I've noticed as I'm getting older is I'm actually going, I don't owe everyone me.
True.
Not everyone deserves to know everything about me.
Yes.
Actually, my openness is a really good quality.
Yeah.
It makes me a really effective communicator.
Yes.
It makes me charismatic, engage with people. That's great. But also, not everyone should be trusted with this thing. And even if it's like, I've got no shame attached to it. It's just a case of, I don't know you.
Yeah.
So I feel like, and I've noticed kind of in culture, in our society at least, a little bit of a shift of more women are kind of taking back that and going, actually, I can do that too. I don't actually owe everyone all of me all the time.
Yeah.
I've noticed this, and what you were saying with guys, when I say, like, you know, I feel like I can ask this question and I know the answer mostly already. What you said is approximately about what my inclination of it is, and in terms of, especially, we see, you know, and this is the other thing I'd say about patriarchy, it harms men a lot. Because
men are victims of a lot.
Yeah, because then it's like, then they feel this pressure that they have to be strong or they can't talk about stuff. When all I want from someone, and it's so frustrating if you're in a relationship with someone who can't open up.
Yes.
Because there comes to a point where you just go, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
Because, like, you can't be real with me.
Yeah.
Like, how can I fuck with you if you can't be honest with me?
Yeah. I would definitely say I think for men dominate the physicality domain, right? Which is why you're saying when it comes to having sex, there needs to be an element of trust because he can physically dominate you. Yeah. And I'd say women dominate the emotional domain because women are definitely more socially and emotionally capable and adapted as a general note more than men are. And I think that's
but can you break that down? What do you mean by, like, they're more emotionally
adapted? So what I mean is, like, for example, you can probably read me emotionally without me saying anything, right? Definitely better than most guys could. Like reading subtle cues, picking up on other people's emotions, generally more emotionally intelligent, and being more emotionally intelligent comes with being able to articulate yourself emotionally and express yourself in an adequate way. And I would say, as a general note, that most women are better at doing that than guys are because of being more emotionally and socially adept. So I think it's one of those things where I can completely agree. If you're with a guy and he can't open up to you, how are you supposed to build more of a connection with him? Yeah. But I don't think it's necessarily unnatural, necessarily a bad thing, that maybe in this domain within the relationship, that's where women tend to lead more. Because, you know, we know men will push the physical and will try to lead in the sexual realm. And if you want to have sex with him, then that's great. And in regards to, like, the pressures on men, I think, you know, I've said this before in my videos, that there is a burden of performance on men. As in, men have to become and prove their worth, especially if they're going to be desirable to women. Whereas for women, you kind of, you know, as long as if I call a spade, as long as you're slim and, you know, like, you don't have to be slim, but as long as like you take care of yourself to the average person, you're gonna have options for guys. Like, guys are gonna want you. Do you know what I mean? So I think because of that, and especially because I think, depending on the woman, but because a lot of women they want to feel that their man can protect them. They want to feel that their man can make the important decisions. There's an element of that on guys that, okay, not that he shouldn't be emotional, but he has to be able to be the one for other people to basically fall on to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I would. So your first point about women being more socially, more emotionally mature. I'll work my way through what you just said.
Yes.
So more emotionally adept. I would say, at that point, I feel like we need to pose this. We need to be telling our boys, our men, and encouraging them to be more self-aware,
100%.
so that they can have that too. Because it's not a thing of we're just born this way. It's a no. We're raised that women are expected to be more of this. Sure. So therefore, I feel like most women I know are more self-aware. Yes. I know some really oblivious guys, and you know when you go, 100%. you are really oblivious, and you're comfortable with that. And actually, I don't actually know if that's a good thing, because I think you can have this too. Like, you can be more emotionally tuned in too.
100%.
And I think it's a thing of self-awareness. And
guys should be.
Yeah, and the thing I would love to see is more self-aware people, because I think you would have a lot less problems of misogyny or even racism and things like that. I think if more people were self-aware and actually, like, thought,
Yeah.
I think that would be really helpful.
Yes.
I would say in terms of then going on to your second point about men being dominant in the bedroom, I would say it's difficult. I would maybe challenge that terminology only because...
Well, not dominant in the bedroom. I said
Okay.
more in terms of in the physicality, in the physical realm, men are naturally, they tend to be more dominant because of the reasons we said. We're bigger, generally stronger, etc., etc. So it's more, it's not uncommon that in the physicality things of, when it comes to physicality, like being in the army, like sports, etc., men tend to excel because they have a advantage, if that makes
so
sense.
I would say you obviously you have a biological, very real physical advantage.
Yeah.
I would say again the thing about maybe like liking sports or being a dominant personality is again a testament, I would say, to how you're raised, and also to genetic. I think that's is undeniable. Like, I take after my dad way more than I take after my mum. My mum is very placid.
Yeah.
I love her to bits. She is like in her own world. Bless her. Gotta love her. But she's also hilarious. She's the funniest person I know. But I'm more like my dad, who is a big personality.
Yeah.
He's like, my dad's short too. My dad is like 5'7". My dad fills a room. Like, my dad is loud.
Yeah.
So I would say in terms of like being dominant, I would say yes, for sure. Physically, in terms of strength, size, normally, yeah. I would say that there are still, and I think if we nurtured a culture where everyone was allowed to kind of explore themselves a bit more, or be more in tune with actually what they like and who they are and what makes them feel empowered, I would say you would have more women who were more dominant. And then what was your final point? Sorry, you were saying at the...
I was saying that men have to, in order for them to be desirable to women, they have to basically
be protectors,
they have to
right?
bring value or...
Yeah,
value.
I would, and again, I would stress that really not all women. Really, of course there are some women who are like, I want a strong man, I want a beefy man, I want a protector.
Yes.
I like the way a tall man makes me feel.
Do you like the way a
course.
tall man makes you feel?
I've dated in pretty even spread, you know.
Yeah.
I've dated a pretty even spread. I think doing powerlifting definitely spoiled me.
Okay.
Because I do both men and women. I like strong people. I like muscly people.
Okay.
And I think part of that as well is like I like, and I don't just mean like huge beefcakes, but I mean also just in general, like I like exercising. I think it's important. I think it's really good for your health. And so I am attracted to people who equally think that that's important. Like, I'm personally not, and again, I've dated people who were super heavyweights, 120 kilo plus. I've dated people who were like 80 kilo.
Yeah.
So
when you say
within
heavyweight,
guys.
do you mean like they're that heavy because of muscle or because of fat?
Muscle and fat, and they're normally pretty tall too. The like the super heavyweight powerlifters. So I've had both. And so it's not so much a thing of like, oh yeah, I don't like fat people, or I do like fat people, or I like really lean people, or I like whatever.
Yeah.
So it's kind of an even spread, but it's more if you're someone who is like physically active. For me, someone who is like slovenly, someone who just wants to sit and watch TV, someone who's not very proactive, like those things kind of go hand in hand for me. So I'm like, I'm not into that, because actually I really like someone who has get up and go.
Yeah.
So, and part of that for me is someone who is like physically active and who like wants to go out for a hike or whatever. I don't know. It doesn't have to be the same sport that I enjoy.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It could be.
So do you think? So I'm gonna.
But I would say the thing about wanting a protector.
Sorry, go on.
The main. Sorry, circling back.
Yeah.
Went on a tangent then about fit people. The main thing about like protectors, I would say, I guess it depends if you feel like you need protecting. I would say if for some people, I'm sure that there are definitely women who are like, yes, I want a strong man. For me, I'm like, I like strength in people in general, but I don't think that strength is restricted to your physical strength or this thing of like, I must be stoic. For me, stoicism doesn't equate strength. I think strength of character is being able to be in touch with your emotions.
Yep.
Being someone who is in touch with and able to access a full range of their emotions. So not just I can be angry or nothing, because anger is also an emotion. Like, I feel like this is a narrative people forget when they say women are the emotional ones. It's like, if you've got a very angry man, that's still an emotion, right?
Yeah.
But I would say being in touch with your whole range of your emotions, like that to me, I'm like, wow, what strength of character? Strength of character is standing up for what you believe in, and being someone who's like, yeah, I believe this, but I also think we should encourage that in our women too, and I think that women are kind of trodden down in that aspect. So
do you think I agree that strength and character in terms of being understanding your emotions, and even more so if you can articulate those things. But I would say that, and I think especially women seeing men, a man who is led by his emotions, I think is seen as, I don't want to say a weak man, but that's the only thing I can see. That's the only term I can come up with. A man who is led by his emotions is seen as less capable than a man who can acknowledge his emotions, but then isn't completely led by them.
I would say that's a universal thing though, because I would say anyone who is led completely by their emotions is a fool.
Right.
Because you also have to use your common sense.
Yeah.
Even if you're not a brain surgeon, okay?
Yes.
You should use your head in situations, and you should have a balance between head and heart.
Yep.
You know, I think it's healthy.
Yes.
So I would say being someone who, say if you, and I'm going to use the example and whatever, say if you're a guy who is someone where you're like, yes, I cry a lot as a guy. But you're also someone where it's like, yes, I cry a lot, but actually I work this really high-powered job and I do this and I do that. I don't think that's I don't think someone who expresses that side of their emotions more, I don't think that's weakness, although I can see why, because then that narrative has been pushed for so long. And part of that is a survival thing, dating hundreds
100%.
of years back, like it's part of a thing of, you know,
Yeah.
you actually have to like pull your shit together.
Yeah, definitely.
But I would say that anyone being completely led by their emotions, I think a woman being completely led by her emotions, you just end up like, that's when you get this thing of like, oh my god, she's neurotic. Like,
Though I would say the difference is if a woman is more led by her emotions, that doesn't necessarily make her less desirable to guys, because I think there are things that she may bring that other guys, that most guys would value more.
Yeah.
Whereas I think if a guy is completely led by his emotions, I think for a lot of women that turns them off, because it's like, I can't rely on him to do what he needs to do if I need him to do that.
Yeah, so I would say it's a thing of like yin and yang, kind of opposites attract, right? So I'd say
100%.
if you sit at one end of the spectrum of like your man is very stoic, and again, this is we've been talking largely in like heteronormative terms, and I'll continue to use that for the sake of this argument. But if you're looking at a very stoic guy, generally speaking, you're probably going to end up with a much kind of softer woman.
Yeah.
Maybe she's more led by her emotions. I would say if you have people who are more in the middle, then they kind of tend to go like this a little bit more. And I think if you have someone who's more moderate, say a guy who he can be stoic, but he's maybe a bit more emotional, a woman who's slightly more emotional than stoic, but she sits here, then those guys are kind of happy.
I agree.
And sometimes you find people who are perfectly in the middle. Sometimes it goes the other way.
Yes.
And then I would say as well, if it's a whole another kind of topic of conversation when you have a male gay relationship or a female gay relationship.
Yeah. Well, I did a video on this actually. Even in gay couples, do you not think there's, because like for attraction and energy to flow, there needs to be polarity.
Yeah. No, for sure.
So even and you tell me, like, you know, I have a lot of gay friends in the industry, like musical theatre industry. You know, one of my closest female friends, she's bi, and even in gay couples, I feel like you can still see one who maybe has certain traits that are more stereotypically masculine, and the other one that are more stereotypically feminine, and that's like you said, the yin and the yang. Does that make sense?
Yeah, although I would
What do you think?
say that the terminology, I would make the point of not slipping into the whole of who's more of the man and who's more of the woman.
Absolutely not.
So, but I know that that's not what you're trying to say. But
Yeah.
I would say for people out there who are listening,
Yeah.
I would say that there's definitely in relationships there are people who exhibit more, and I personally prefer to break away from terms of like more like masculine or feminine and maybe label it more for like what it is, because I think, and again, depending on what culture you're in,
Very true.
in the world will change what you attribute to be a masculine or feminine culture energy. I think if you're in a matriarchal society, which there are, then all of a sudden it's like, oh, these are the women which are actually the head of the household. The men, like, I think there's a community in China where the women, it's a matriarchal society, and the women are always the heads of the household. The women control the money. Da 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 da. So in that society, that's a trait. That's a feminine trait because it's the female who's doing that.
Very true.
So I would say breaking away from that language. Yes, if you have someone who's more kind of stoic, more contained, they tend to be with people who are slightly different to them because opposites attract and it complements each other. And like, I wouldn't want to date myself. Like, I tend to date people who are. I like people who are easygoing. I like people who like to laugh. People have similar hobbies.
Yeah.
But I tend to prefer people who are maybe slightly less exuberant than me.
Yeah.
Maybe like someone who's still a go-getter, but someone who I'm not afraid to date someone who's more introverted. I don't need to date someone as extroverted as I am. It would be a very loud household.
Do you find that you are more naturally drawn to people who are more introverted if consider yourself quite more extroverted?
Yeah, I would say that I kind of like josh around and maybe have like some more the thing for me is like can I banter with someone, right? Can I like, do I have that energy? It's like my sense of humor can be a little bit brutal, right? So it's like if I can have these jokes with someone. I was actually just staying with a friend who I remember an ex of mine was like, you shouldn't be friends with him. You're horrible to each other. He's not a good friend. But that's our dynamic. We are just brutal to each other, but we have so much love for each other.
100%. Yeah.
But yeah, if I can have that kind of a rapport with someone, like the rapport is the most important thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes people are more introvert, sometimes they're more extrovert. I think other factors also come into play about if they're an extrovert. Like the thing that I find really annoying is if someone says something and they say it for show and then they kind of look around the room like waiting for someone to be like, oh, isn't he hilarious?
Oh yeah, virtue
like,
signaling.
Yeah. So stuff like that when people are trying really hard.
Yes.
That I find off-putting. So and you see that sometimes in acting spaces, musical theatre spaces. People
100%.
are like, I'm trying to impress.
Yeah.
And I find that I just hate it so much. So I would maybe say I tend to go for people who are more like laid back energy. People like I've dated musicians and skaters and things of people who are just a little bit like happy to like to kind of cruise in a social setting and you can vibe with and you don't always have to be constantly talking to each other.
Yes.
To be like, oh, isn't this fun? Like you can, someone that you're comfortable with that you can also sit in silence with. But I mean, yeah, I think I've dated a kind of an array of people. I think the people that I've vibed the most with have been people who are like easygoing but happy people, personable, chatty, kind people.
Yeah, of course.
So, but yeah, I think it depends. I think there's exceptions to the rule, but I do definitely think opposites attract. I see it in my parents. I see that like, oh my god, like my dad had a car crash when I was a kid and he suffered a lot of brain damage.
Right.
And it changed a lot of who he was, or kind of heightened maybe some not so nice aspects of his personality.
Yeah.
And that was really, really difficult as a child to grow up around.
Yeah.
But it made me realise how incredibly strong my mum is. And how if anybody else had been married to him, it would have ended in divorce. If it hadn't been for my mum and how placid she, and how much of like a boat, like she's a calm boat in stormy weather.
Yeah.
Okay, she kind of sails through. If it wasn't for the fact that she has that calmness about her, like it wouldn't have worked. So I think in their situation that really works.
Yeah.
And my mum is also independent, so the fact that my dad is really chatty, personable, likes to go out and do social stuff, maybe she doesn't so much. Yeah. It still works for them because my mum's like, well, I don't need to be around him all the time. I'm doing my own shit. Like, I'm reading my book. I'm perfectly happy. Like, you know, go off, do whatever it is you're doing. Go for drinks with people. I don't mind.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think for sure no one should date themselves because then you're just a narcissist.
Yeah.
And opposites attract. But
do you so obviously you date guys and girls.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And for like, let's say a guy, do you like guys who are taller than you, for example? Would you prefer guys who are taller than you over guys who are smaller, or height doesn't even contribute to their attractiveness to you?
I would say perhaps it comes in well, I would like to say I like women who are taller than me too.
Okay.
Tends to be the general trend.
Okay, so people in general.
I don't know why. I don't know if it. I don't know what you could trace that back to. I would make my point again of like, for the most part, I've never had someone shorter than me, so I couldn't really speak on that. I'm not that tall anyway. I'm 5'4", so you'd have to be quite short as a guy to be shorter than me. But I dated someone who was 5'5", 5'6", I think, 5'6".
Yeah.
Not for a long time, but like I was still equally as attracted to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really know. I would say the general trend of people within male sphere is like, yes, taller than me, and yes, normally around the like 5'10" mark, I would say.
Yeah.
But I've dated people who are short, I've dated people who are taller. I'd say with regards to women, I don't feel so attracted to women who are like really short.
Right.
Actually, like one of my friends is really short, and she's like, I only want to date a guy who's over 6'3" because I love to be thrown about the room. And I'm like, oh. Like honestly, I'm like, that's wrong. That's not that it's wrong, but I'm like, oh, it feels weird to me on so many levels. Like this kind of
why does it feel weird to you?
Connotations to me of like, I don't know, because she's. I don't know. I'm not really so much into women who are considerably shorter than me. I think it feels more like I've got my like kid sister with me. I don't know, but I mean, it's not really a problem I've had so far. Who knows? Maybe I'm gonna fall in love with a woman who's like 4'5" or something. Are you legally a dwarf at that point?
I think
you
might
are.
Be. I think it's below 4'10". I think you are.
That could be cute.
Yeah. Why do you think your friend? Because I've heard a lot of girls say the same thing. You know, they like a guy who they feel is dominant. Why do you think?
I think you can't deny that.
She likes that.
I think if you have a kink, say if your kink is like or you lean more as like, okay, as a woman, I prefer to be sexually submissive.
Yes.
Then I think definitely you're kind of like, okay, I prefer my man to be dominant physically.
Sure.
Then I think height can be a part of that. I think a lot of this is what we've actually created for ourselves because we've pushed this thing of like male is more dominant. This is the.
Do you think we pushed that, or do you think there is an element of historical biological truth in that?
I think it's both. I think there is a biological truth because survival of the fittest.
Sure.
But also when you're in a famine, the shortest guys survive the longest. I would like to stress that point.
They need less food.
I would like to say
this
is true. This is
point.
actually a thing. When in the Korean War, like, and you see this in North Korea, the North Koreans are very short.
Yeah.
The first people to die in the famines were the tall people.
Makes sense.
They need more food.
Very true.
So survival of the fittest, unless you're in a famine. I would say that I would say it's a combination. I would say it's part of it is we've blown it up. Popular media, film, TV perpetuates it.
Very true.
And it kind of then it's just this perpetual cycle because it when it gets into society, then we no longer even need the media to tell us this is what the ideal is. We kind of then it's that thing of like we self-police and we self-enforce and we kind of continue to generate that narrative.
Yeah.
So I would say that's part of it.
Yeah.
I would say also sometimes people do just have a sexual thing and you can't even reduce it down to like, okay, but is it because of like this? Because I think there are, in general, more women who are sexually submissive. Part of me thinks, okay, is that because of the narrative thing, or is that just they just happen to be? I think a lot of it you can trace back to the fact that that's kind of what's expected, and I think that informs from a young age, will inform your sexuality, what your sexual preferences are.
Yeah.
So I think it's hard to say if it's purely sexual, purely biological.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of the way that we're raised comes into informing someone's sexuality.
Sure.
So I would say that's maybe more why you have, or I'd say that is why you have a lot more women who are submissive. I think as you get older, you tend to see women going, oh, actually, I think I prefer being dominant. I think because as women get older, they come into their own more and they stop caring so much about...
They want to play in that field to see what it's like, because I don't think it's just you're all this, you're all that.
Yeah.
But I do think it's like, you know, we can chop and change, but maybe we like to sit here, or we like to sit here.
And so I would say in the case with my friend, like she... and I think it is a thing of women, I think in part because of what we kind of have as this ideal in a relationship. I would say that definitely informs it, but I would say as well, like, kink and sexuality is a difficult thing to unravel. I'm not a therapist. Couldn't personally kind of like talk on the deeper inner workings of her mind. But it is definitely a trend for women to be like
Yeah.
sexually like, you know, I want this thing. But I think we are breaking away from it, because I think the more we talk about it, the more we go like, oh, isn't that a bit dumb? And also, so many of these people who are like, I'll only date someone who's over 6'3", then they end up marrying someone who's like 5'7", and it's like, oh, I just found the one. Like, you know, when you know.
How important really is it?
I think
So
it's
true.
that thing again of like, mate, get off the mobile dating apps. Like,
Yeah.
because when you actually connect with people in real life, so much of that stuff becomes obsolete. Because all of these
agree.
things you have as a tick list on paper, you're like, oh, actually.
Could throw all of that out. Just
Well,
focus on
and
the
also
person.
so many people have exactly the same criteria. It's like, needs to be funny, needs to be attractive. It's like all generic things where it's like, of course that's what you want in a partner. If I'm not attracted to my partner, then he's not my partner, he's just a friend.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
do you know what I mean? So, yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think the more people can get out and actually just have those interactions in real life, I think so much toxicity
Yeah.
goes away, because you can connect with people and you don't have this weird
I agree.
kind of tribalism thing that we talked about at the
Yeah,
beginning.
which is exactly what we're trying to do here.
Yes!
Look, Ems, we could chat for ages.
Yeah, I
I
feel like we could.
always love chatting to you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
I hope you guys had fun. I'm going to put her socials in the link below so you can check her out. Definitely check her out as an artist. And where you off to now? You're off to the protest, aren't you?
Yeah. I'm off to one of the anti-war protests outside Downing Street, protesting specifically for refugee rights.
Perfect.
Ukrainians. Fuck Priti Patel.
That's it. Well, all the best with that. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you in the next episode.
Pow.